So my name is just Toledo. I'm a rising sophomore at the George Washington University, majoring in computer science. And the reason oh wait, can people hear me? Okay. The reason I wanted to do this is because as a computer science major, there's lots of paths that people can possibly go through, whether it's government, big companies, small tech startups. And I wanted to hear from engineers that are in companies that are so involved now in the tech world. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me, and I want to get started with you guys. So if Jasmine wants to start with her introduction.
Sure. So yes, thank you for introducing us, Julissa. My name is Jasmine Greenaway. I am a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. I just started this week. In fact, I'm actually sitting here in Washington State for my first day was Monday. So, but previously I was at GitHub. Before that, Rockstar Games, and I've been an engineer for the past 7 years. But now I've just taken a different role into advocacy, which is also writing code, but also writing blogs and tutorials and doing talks. That's me.
Rhea, if you want to start next.
Sure. My name is Rhea Miara. I'm a product manager here at IBM Watson, formerly a software engineer. And what I do is I drive product vision and technical strategy for applications that focus on cognitive and artificial intelligence.
Cool. Sumbul, you want to start?
Yeah, my name's Sumbul Alvi. I work at Snapchat in New York, and I'm currently working on back-end system design. And previously, I was doing mobile engineering, so that's kind of like where I started my engineering career, started my internships. So yeah, and I started working at Snapchat in January. I was working at Tumblr before that, and before that, I was in Toronto working at Pivotal Labs.
Cool introductions. Everyone has different little aspects of themselves. So I want to get started on why you guys are in the tech field. How did you know that this career was your fit? What made you go into this field? We can start with Rhea.
Sure. So I think that for me, what was fascinating about tech was the pace and the rate at which things were changing for the better. All the gadgets, computers, phones, and such that I owned were becoming obsolete and outdated within matters of months. And that was quite thrilling. And furthermore, I feel like kind of walking into the tech industry, the way that I knew it was a career fit for me was that the first month of my job, every day that I came into work in the morning, I was, kind of handed tasks, and in my head, I was saying to myself, there is no way, I have no idea how to do this, how I can, get this done, and then by 5, 6, sometimes, 8, 9 p.m., I'd accomplished it. And so it was just that constant challenge that made me realize it was indeed a career fit.
Okay, so Sumbul, if you want to answer what made you go into tech and being an engineer.
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of my origin story. So my love for tech really it came out of, an inspiration from my dad, who taught me and my sister to take apart computers and put them back together again when I was 10 years old. And he got us a textbook that taught us how to use Photoshop and got us to start making websites. And in high school, I continued making websites and decided that I should take computer science because I really want to get better at making these websites. So my real eureka moment was when I was in grade 12 computer science class, and I finally understood after, I think, 2 weeks of not really knowing how recursion worked, but I finally understood it after 2 weeks. And I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy that this is a pattern that, people actually use in real software. So I really wanted to know more. and I ended up taking computer engineering when I was in university. And throughout my college years, I started understanding that, you know, the projects that I'm working on and the ideas and decisions that I'm making can really have a huge impact on people's lives and in the world. So I think the curiosity of learning how things are built and creating things that can really have an effect on people is super special. It's a very, you know, it's a humbling field to be in, which really made me go into tech, and, you know, here we are.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. With being able to impact people's lives, I think that's really awesome in tech. Jasmine, if you want to answer what made you go into engineering and tech field.
Sure. Basically, when I was like probably the late 90s, early 2000s, we got our first computer in the internet, and I used to be kind of like the tech person in the house, like fixing computers. Oh, did you restart the computer? That kind of stuff. And then eventually I got like interested in like playing around with like different like programs. Like there was this program very similar to PowerPoint called Choral Presentation. And it's like basically pretty much just like PowerPoint. You put like, you know, make your slides. But I was young, and, you know, being a kid, I just put like weird stuff on it. So I put like really weird faces. And one day I was like, I want to get this on the internet. And so I used this platform called, at the time, made by Yahoo, called GeoCities, where you can host your own website. And I put it up there, and yeah, and that kind of took off from there. And that turned into me like altering stuff for altering my profile for MySpace back then, and that turned into altering stuff for LiveJournal when that was a thing. And so, you know, and I had a lot of fun with it, but I didn't think of it as being a career choice for me or a career path for me, because I wanted to be a meteorologist. I wanted to do research all over the world, and like just like write reports and stuff like that. But when I went to college, I went to school for research meteorology, and I was minoring in computer science because I knew it would give you a competitive edge. So, but then I liked computer science better, so I switched my major and minored in meteorology. And I knew it was the perfect fit for me when I would come to work every day and like be excited about what I'm going to work on, like how am I going to tackle this problem, or I'd go home, you know, with a problem that I couldn't figure out that day, but I come back excited because I was like, oh, I got it. I just need to step away. So that's when I realized I'm like, this is fun, and this is like definitely my speed.
That's really awesome hearing how all of you guys got interested into tech. So I know in any career, there's certain moments that you go through, these times that you learn from a mistake that you go through. So Sumbul, did you ever have a career mistake that gave you the biggest lesson in any field that you were in?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing to acknowledge is that throughout your career, you're constantly going to be making mistakes. And those mistakes are really crucial to understanding your field better. So I don't think anyone should be scared of making mistakes, or they should feel bad about it. But one specific one that I definitely learned a huge lesson about was that there's a common misconception one misconception that I had was that I assumed what works really well at one company would work really well at another company, just because it was like, you know, like a development process, a tool, or a piece of software, or just like a way of coding. And so an example of when I learned this, you know, lesson was when I went from working at Pivotal Labs, which is a huge advocate for process, test-driven development, pair programming, so very structured, to Tumblr, which didn't have, you know, project managers at the time. They didn't really do sprint planning or anything. I thought to myself, well, this is great. I have all the knowledge. I have all the tools. I know exactly how to solve this issue that everyone's having. But trying to apply the same kind of, you know, processes and testing strategies, they didn't really work out. And I was really surprised. And I spent like a lot of time trying to convince people. And I was like this, you know, girl coming in and going like, oh, I have all the knowledge, you know. But I think what I came to realize was that the team was already running on their own type of process, which was organic to the organization. And works well from them. A lot of these processes and design decisions and, you know, software decisions, they come from a historical place in a company. They, you know, nobody's just sitting at the top going like, this is the right way to do it or whatever, right? So I learned that there's no real right way to software development or process. There are, you know, optimal ways, and, you know, but I think it really depends on the company, and every team runs on their own frequency. And once you adapt to a new place and you take the time to understand, you know, what are the real issues here, then you can start applying your previous experiences to optimize your current process that's in place.
Okay, so that kind of goes into my next question. I wanted to know, like, what are some misconceptions about being in the tech industry? And then I guess going about those misconceptions, how do you go about solving them? So some of you kind of hinted at that, about how there's one way one company does something, but then it can be completely different in another company. So what are maybe some other misconceptions, and how would you go about that in that industry?
Sure. Should I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that comes to mind. Oh, 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So I think one thing that comes to mind whenever somebody thinks about tech industry, which is a huge misconception, is that, you know, this is your job. You're sitting in front of your computer all day and you're not talking to anyone else, and everyone's really, really smart and everyone's really antisocial. But I think in reality, tech is an industry that requires a lot of communication, and it requires a lot of collaboration between team members, between designers, engineers, you know, product managers, everyone in the whole line, to create a successful system and product. And, you know, you might be the smartest person in the room and know, you know, the right answer to everything, but it really won't matter, because you have to be able to communicate your ideas clearly and be ready to have a discussion about why you might be right, or, you know, understand, make compromises about why you might be wrong. So I think strong communication skills will really help you in the tech industry, will help you in your field, and it's super important to practice them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add to that. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I would say that that it's definitely when I switched my major to software engineering, I thought, like, you know, I'd be in my own little corner, did my own thing, but it really is about collaboration. You don't want to, like, write code by yourself and, like, not have anybody come behind you and check it. You don't want, you know, you want to be able to, like, bounce ideas off back and forth. So that was one big misconception. I mean, there are definitely people, you know, in the industry who do that. But, you know, that's not most everyone's speed, and not everyone's, you know, everyone's, like, in it to, like, help each other out, because at the end of the day, it's about the product. It's not about just you or just what you've done. So yeah, that's definitely one to just agree with that.
So that kind of also ties into the next question with misconception. I guess college students are always told one thing, or anybody that's just learning anything in tech, they're told one thing, that they have to go through one path. I wanted to know what would be one thing you tell yourself, your college self, and what's one thing that you wish you hadn't heard back then in college, so, or when anybody was helping you learning how to code. So Rhea, if you want to answer.
Yeah, some piece of advice I kind of wish I hadn't heard is that grades are super duper important. I think college and school and, you know, the education you get at your university is so much more than just grades and you know, especially test scores. What I mean by that is you really should take advantage of the clubs around you, the friends that you're meeting in these classes, you know, this network of smart and creative minds that think differently from you. I mean, that's something to learn from, and, you know, get involved with side projects, build things for the sake of getting feedback and improving, and you know, getting better at your craft, and you know, be sure to kind of add your own spin to it, add your own style to it, and you know, definitely just code for fun, you know, contribute to open source, and think beyond the classroom. because, you know, grades are, I don't want to kind of brush them off, but they certainly aren't the only thing or the most, even the most important thing when it comes to industry.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. When I graduated from college, I definitely did not have the highest GPA, and it's not like, you know, I was like out partying all day. It's just like, you know, it's like, you know, when you work and you have other responsibilities, it's, you know, it's a lot, and you know, some things, you know, kind of get, I don't want to say thrown by the wayside, but you know, some things take priority than others, and you know, and like, you know, managing your time, you know, you're in your early 20s, late teens. I mean, you're still, you know, we're all still figuring it out. You know, I'm 29, I'm still trying to figure it out, you know. So like, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about it's, you know, everyone kind of learns at their own pace, and you know, grades should not be the defining factor of what your future is going to be like. So I definitely agree with Rhea about that. And I would also say that, also agree that, yeah, definitely practice makes perfect. Exposing yourself to what the technology that you want to use and the technology that you're interested in. Even if you're not interested in, even if you don't have a general interest in like, or a specific interest in anything yet, like just dabble, figure out like, you know, what you like, because, you know, computer science and like, you know, a lot of these degrees, you know, like especially in a traditional like university setting, they're teaching you like the basics. They're teaching you the foundations, like, you know, such as like object-oriented programming and algorithms and all that stuff. But then after that, you know, once you start your job, it's up to you to kind of like mold and shape your career and figure out what you like and what you don't like. It took me like 3 years to figure out that I like back end engineering. I'm not a front end person, and it's just going to take time. And so when you graduate, you might be thinking, oh, what do I do next? What do I do now? What do I do next? I would say don't stress, because it might change.
Sumbo, if you want to add what's something that you would tell your college self and what's something that you wish you hadn't heard back then?
Yeah. Well, I think as a college student, I was always kind of worried about, you know, what is my career trajectory? Like, what do I need to start doing? Should I go into product management first? Should I, you know, become a software engineer? What platform should I start working on? And I think something that I didn't really think about was that I can change that, you know, like you can definitely switch platforms, you can jump between technologies, and there is a lot of flexibility in tech that, you know, it's a privilege to be, you know, be able to be working in this industry due to it, where you don't have to figure out everything when you're in college. You don't have to figure out everything when you're 25 or 26 or 27 or 30 or 35, you know, because it's really flexible. One thing that you learn, you know, something you learn in one platform or for one technology can definitely transfer over to working on another thing. So I think I would tell my college self, like, don't stress out about what your first job is going to be. Don't try to plan out what you're going to do for the next 5 years. Don't, you know, you can plan it out. It's good to have goals, but I think stressing out over it is not, you know, it's not going to, it's like a year later, you're going to be like, oh, I'm a totally different person. I want to do something totally different. And you'll just be in a different place. And I think what I have learned over the past few years is that what I want to do next year right now is going to be completely different from what I'll actually want to do. Right. So I make goals for myself, but at the same time, I leave that flexibility that, you know, maybe I won't want to do this next year. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm not going to force myself to do this if I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of with learning about yourself, what about on your own? What should you be learning in terms of hard skills and soft skills for any field, any type of job that you want to go into? So whether learning specific languages or how to apply specific languages, if Ray wants to start again.
Sure, yeah. I think the most obvious is to stay relevant with current technologies. I mean, whether that's frameworks and languages or programming paradigms. But a more abstract skill that's key to success in the workplace is simply learning how to interact with people. And that's, you know, it seems so simple, but learning how to really adapt to environments where you're part of a team is something that can be very different from school. You may rock your coding projects and you may study absurd amounts of time for your exams and turn in your homework on time. But when you get to the workplace and you're now collaborating with others, it's a totally different dynamic. And learning to communicate effectively and walking in and being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, especially those that everybody thinks differently. So, really making an investment in that communication and with the stress on learning how to get feedback as well. So accepting that you're not always going to be right and accepting that, maybe there's a more efficient or effective way to go about things. So it's truly taking the best version of you and being able to bring out the best in everybody else that you're working with. So realizing kind of you're not the only person in the room anymore. Communication is everything. And, the programming skills, the frameworks, that can be taught through books and through, courses online and practice. But, that communication takes being there in the flesh, in the moment, and experiencing it firsthand. So, again, that kind of piggybacks off the previous answer I gave. Take advantage of your friends that you're meeting in college, your network, and build strong relationships.
I'll chime in.
Oh, okay.
I'll try. Yeah, sure. I'll chime in on that. I would definitely agree with that. When I started at GitHub, I started as a remote engineer, and it was very, very, very important that I knew how to communicate properly so that my point would get across and everybody would understand what I was, and people would just understand what I was saying in general. So, yeah, I would say communication is very, very communication, empathy, understanding how to put yourself in other shoes, understanding other viewpoints is very important. And in terms of hard skills, there's one I would just want to add on, and this may or may not be something that you might learn in school, but I would say that I would treat source control seriously. I would say that a lot of us learning. A lot of us in the industry use Git. Get familiar with Git at some level, whether it's a very, very basic level, whether it's like cloning projects, cloning repositories, just knowing that is a very widely used version or type of source control is really important. It'll help you get ahead in terms of having to manage like a huge code base, because when you join a team, you have your own local copy of the code, but the rest of the code that actually is in production lives somewhere on a cloud or server somewhere, and you're gonna have to add your code to that. So knowing how that all works is would definitely give you an upper hand when you start your first job or your internship.
Yeah, I totally agree with both Rhea and Jasmine. Communication, super important soft skill. You're always going to be collaborating on projects, on services, on anything. And for sure, source control. That's something that I think is awesome advice. It's used in every single company that you go to and is a great thing to pick up when you're in college. And yeah, I think in general, I think it's really important to expose yourself to different types of technologies and that you find exciting to yourself, because those skills will definitely transfer over. There is something that is, learning to learn is a real thing. And I think just exposing yourself to as much as you can before you actually go into the industry would be super helpful.
That's great to know for myself as well. So in being in tech, I wanted to know if there's something that you never thought you would have been able to participate in, either travel, meet someone that you never thought you would have ever been able to meet, or.
I'll go first. I would say that I have never been able. The first time I went to Europe was because of work and because I was in the industry. You know, just being a uh, at GitHub, I was remote. Like I was mentioning before, I was remote, and most of my team was in Europe. And we would do this thing called mini summits where we all get together in like one spot. And since most of the folks were in Europe, it's like, oh man, I got to go to Europe. So I hung out in Copenhagen and Denmark, and that was really really fun. Just like, and then also just like, going to conferences and like listening to like, just really inspiring and amazing people talk, like sitting in their front row and just like absorbing everyone's like ideas. And like I also really enjoy like connecting with people at like conferences. And like I've actually made a lot of like great friends just through the community, the local community, and just like conferences. Like I've had like a handful of good friends, and like because I don't know if I would have ever been able to get to know them like that had we not crossed paths. So I feel very fortunate to be able to like, have the opportunity to be able to like go these places, do these, do these things, meet these people who are also doing the same thing as I am. So yeah.
That sounds awesome. Rhea, if you have an experience or a memory that you never thought you would have had if it weren't for tech.
Yeah, I would piggyback right off of Jasmine and say that travel is a huge perk. I've been lucky enough to work with teams across the country and across the globe. So everywhere from Tokyo to London, Dublin, SF, Atlanta, Boston, New York. It's really nice to be able to connect with people, whether it's your own teams that you're kind of Skyping with remotely day to day, or at conferences to chat with people from other companies, all with the same motive of again, kind of this continuous learning, continuous improvement, and really kind of being able to challenge each other in constructive ways. That's the conferences, the travel. I mean, I don't think I'd ever be able to do that without being in tech.
Cool. So as the tech field is constantly growing and we can't do anything about it, I wanted to know what's one of the biggest things you see that rising engineers or even yourself are going to have to face and deal with in the coming years. Sumbo, if you want to get started on that.
Oh, sorry. There's one thing I wanted to add on to that.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to kind of just like get through the elephant in the room in terms of like things you're never able to do as a when you're in tech. If you look at like salary and stuff like that in terms of like engineers compared to like other industries, you will see that it's it's pretty like it's a very competitive salary. And that's one of when I saw like my first like paycheck in tech, I was like, whoa. And that's one thing I never thought I would be able to see in my life. And and it's really like I kind of like patted myself on the back when I saw that. I was like, wow, I can actually I can save money and do things and go on vacation. So I just wanted to say that like tech still pays well, and it is beneficial financially for you.
Cool. That's surprising, and that's something that people will look forward to, I can tell. So like with a challenge, I guess, is becoming an engineer instead of what you mentioned, Jasmine. I guess you can focus on what's the biggest challenge that you see as engineers are coming, either Jasmine or Sumbo, whoever.
You can go ahead, Sumbo. I didn't mean to steal your fire.
No problem. You're making some really good points. So I think the biggest challenge that, I don't think this is a new challenge. It's, this has been around for a few years now, and it's going to continue being an issue that we see, is that technology and tools are just evolving so quickly. This means that you're always going to have to like try really hard to stay in the loop and, try to keep your skills really relevant. And there are going to be moments when, as an engineer, you're going to join a new team and they're going to be like, oh, we're using Spark for running our jobs or whatever, and you're going to be like, great, I have to learn what Spark is now. Why can't we just be using what I already know, kind of thing. But also, like I said before, it's one good thing about tech is that any skill that you learn on one technology can usually be effective and applied to another technology. So most of the time, you're not wasting your time, learning one thing over another thing.
Yeah. So, and we're talking about just challenges in general, right? So,
Yeah.
I would say that one challenge is, in terms of just resources. There's so many things that are teaching you how to, write code. There's boot camps, there's tutorials, there's ones you can pay, there's ones that are free, and like filtering through that fire hose of information can be very, very hard for someone who's just joining or just going in. And I would say that in terms of that, if you're just kind of exploring on your own, I would say the first thing you should do is Google whatever whatever you're interested in, and take the very first few hits, take the very first few results, and work with that. And then I would also say go to GitHub or Bitbucket or anywhere where there's open source software, and kind of compare the things that you're seeing in example and tutorials against what you're seeing in real life and open source projects. But yeah, I would say the biggest challenge in terms of, and I guess aside from that, is just tooling. There's so many tools that you can use for the job, and trying to figure out, and sometimes that can take as much time as actually writing the code, because you're trying to figure out what works for you. And so I would just if I were a beginner at this point, I would just start with the basics and then build up and see, and then eventually as you write code, you're like, I need this. I would love if I had this, and then maybe you would write a tool, or maybe there's probably a tool already there. So yeah.
Okay, so I have one more question and everyone can answer. What do you love about technology? Are happy that it's here? And then what's something that you hate and wish you could change about technology? It could be, for example, I'm a little scared about the privacy issues. Everything's online. So I don't know if there's anything you guys don't like and something you. So Rhea, you can start.
Yeah, I'll go first, and you touched on one of the points I wanted to make. What I love about tech is that you have the power to make a huge ripple and disrupt, different industries and revamp kind of legacy processes and really change things with nothing other than a laptop. I mean, you don't need a bunch of cash or to be born into royalty or anything for that matter. I mean, you need perseverance. You need to be able to fail and get back up again, and just understand how to continue moving forward and continue learning, and deploying an application can quite literally change the world. So that's what I love about tech. What I hate is definitely the creepiness of the precise digital advertising that you see sometimes, and you're like, how did they know I was looking at this? Or whether it's just an overall breach of information sometimes. I mean, if anybody on this live chat has ever read Incomplete, the terms and agreements that they signed to join Facebook or YouTube or any of those, I would be very surprised, and it's frightening. That's something that I would definitely change. I think that your data should be yours.
In terms of things that I am not a fan of, I would have to agree with Ray there. In terms of your information being yours, and you having the freedom whether or not you want to share those things or not. And the problem is it's also societal thing, right? It's all about who people say I have nothing to hide, but it's not about not having anything to hide. It's having the choice to hide if you want to. And, and I think so, it's about like all of us taking security seriously at this point, and not like, doing things that like, writing your password on a sticky note and putting it on your computer and things like that. Folks still do that. And like thinking about doing things like using like a password manager and things like that are just like the little tiny things that people can do to like, kind of secure themselves a little bit more. But one of the things that I do love about technology is just the versatility and the things that you can do. There's just like, it's like just endless possibilities. And it can be a little fast paced, but just because you jump off the wagon for a bit doesn't mean that you can't get back on, and there'll be times where you just like, I want to work on all these projects and I just don't have time. But at the end of the day, someone is either thinking of the problem to, or the solution to the problem that you had in a different way, and might have written something. And yeah, there's just like so many just ideas and like interesting innovations and things being written and created. It's just like, it's like so hard not to like open your computer and not be inspired every day. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, something that I love about technology is that it really has the ability to extend our bodies and our minds to further and further limits, like every single year over time. And Amber Case did a really interesting TED Talk on how at this point in our lives, we're all actually cyborgs, in the sense that technology is such a crucial part in our evolution. How we think about things, how we behave, and how much we know and how much we can actually do in connecting with other people, going about our daily lives. It has such a huge influence. And I think that conclusion is a really exciting one, because it means that humans are going to continue evolving at a quick rate, just like technology does. So I think that's something that I love about technology. Something that I dislike and I would definitely change is the lack of accessibility options for different types of disabilities for people. By accessibility, I mean designing services or products or experiences that are for users with disabilities. And unfortunately, a lot of companies, they cut corners and they don't really take accessibility into account and think about, low revenue markets. And I think since technology moves so fast, companies move really fast. It's not really a market they want to they don't want to prioritize that market. And it's a little bit of a catch-22 because technology is so important in everything that we do today. So I would want there to be some kind of rule that requires companies to allocate resources to work on accessibility. Just like right now there are rules about providing wheelchair accessible bathrooms, there should be rules about creating products that take into account more than just the average able-bodied user.
Yeah, that's for sure. Technology's advancing, and it's like there's sometimes that you're just wondering, like, why isn't this already being done? So I appreciate you guys all answering my questions, but I'm gonna start looking at everybody else's questions. I'm gonna like make them a little vague so that they're not just specific for all of them. So 325VVI asked, I want to do an internship in UI/UX at Microsoft, or I'm gonna open it to everybody else. What should I do? What do I need? And how do I apply? So Jasmine, he kind of mentioned Microsoft, so I don't know if you wanna pick that one up.
I've only been here for 4 days, and I have never designed a thing in my life that I was not paid for, because I don't know how to design very well. But I would say that one important thing is definitely a portfolio. It's all about like showing your work. I mean, that's like, I'm assuming that's one of the biggest things in terms of like, something that's so visible or visual. And as far as Microsoft goes, I would say, Microsoft is really great at like seeing all of you, seeing who you are as a person. Like, and like, when I came in for my interview, they were asking me about the projects that I had on my GitHub. They asked me about the blog that I don't write on anymore. They asked me like, about like the talks I did. And so they really, and like, the interview process, like they really invest themselves into you. So like everything that you put out there, they're going to be interested in like looking at what, what you've done and, where you're going and where you see yourself at a place like Microsoft or somewhere else.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think more than a nice resume is a personal website that is a showcase for all the work you've done. GitHub is obviously something that needs to be maintained and kept up to date. I've walked into interviews where my GitHub was right there on the interviewer's computer screen, and they're like, "So, tell me about this project." And it's a lot more than what's on paper, and a personal website or a portfolio showcasing not just your projects but your experience is definitely key.
Okay, so next question, Allison Flynn asked, have any of you started / and or had a job as an L1 in technical support, possibly while you were getting your degrees? And if so, do you feel it is a beneficial position to have if you want to be a part of it? I believe she wants. Oh, be a software engineer.
I was doing IT as a part-timer in college, and the skills that I learned there and I had there, they really didn't. I don't think they transferred over to my software engineering degree or my career. And I'm really trying to think if there really was. I mean, at the end of the day, it was for me. It was kind of a precursor into this, like the culture, that's when I started to realize there are a lot, it's like, it's heavily, it has a lot, there's a lot of men in the industry. And, when I started to realize, like, how to collaborate, like sometimes, someone would be like, would take apart like a few things in a desktop computer, and like I would be the one who would like have to like find the replacements and stuff like that. So like, kind of like handing off things and like not being afraid to like delegate tasks. And that's where like, that's probably like, I probably feel like I learned a little bit more soft skills than any hard skills that I could transfer over to my career.
So next question from Wyvern132. Can you ask Sumbo if she has an example of when she felt her work was impactful?
Well, everything I work on is very impactful. I'm just kidding. There's definitely going to be a lot of times when you're working on projects and you're kind of just like trying to get through it. You're like, oh, this is so tedious. I'm pixel pushing. No one's going to care about this real, like super little detail. But I think the moment that you really feel like what you did was impactful was if somebody looks at your product and is just like, wow, like this is something I use every day. This is, I know my friends that use this, so many people use this and everything. And it really, I think it really lights that fire again. If you've been working on something that you don't really like or you don't feel is impactful, I think it really brings you back to the moment where you're like, okay, what I'm doing is actually affecting people. What I'm saying is what I'm working on is actually going to have an effect on somebody's life. And as a specific example, I would, well, previously when I worked at Tumblr, that was a product that I used when I was like in high school. And to me, how I kind of looked at it was that, wow, I'm using a product that I never thought I'd be ever working on. And it really, I used to blog a lot. It really kind of shaped my interests. So in that sense, I really enjoyed working at Tumblr, and really, it was kind of like a very personal kind of experience actually implementing features for it because I could imagine myself using them in the past. Yeah.
So I saw a question from Shukan Shah saying, how do you guys go about preparing for technical interviews for companies like IBM, Snapchat, and Microsoft? So, Rhea, if you want to answer, because he said IBM first.
Sure. I think one that everyone has probably heard of is Cracking the Coding Interview. Very famous book. It's got the fundamental core topics, questions, and skills that are covered kind of across the tech industry. I think that's a phenomenal book to pick up. And for me, I think that one thing that is a mistake people very often do is they practice these technical interviews. Wherever you find the questions, they practice them online in on their computer, in their favorite editors with autocomplete and in a very familiar setting. I would definitely recommend that you kind of close the laptop, put Stack Overflow away, and really use pen, paper, or a whiteboard and do it by hand. Because when it comes down to the interviews, once you get past that initial phone screen, I mean, you're going to be face-to-face with somebody, and chances are there's going to be a question on a whiteboard, an algorithm that you need to implement, or a problem that you need to solve without a computer in front of you. No Eclipse autocomplete, no error handling. I mean, you're going to have to do that with your own eyes and brain, and nothing else helping you. So that's the kind of biggest piece of advice that I would have. Put the laptop away.
Yeah, I would say it's really important that you're understanding that the code doesn't solve the problem. It's your solution that solved the problem, and the code is only part of the solution. So I definitely agree with that. And I would say that, Cracking Coding Interview, definitely big help. Great book in terms of resources. But I would also say to not extremely stress yourself out when you're studying for this. Like, it's not, it might feel like you're studying like for like a big test in class, but at the end of the day, remember that, you got the interview because they believe that you have the potential to be on part of the, be part of their team. So I would, if they have anything that kind of hints to like what kind of technologies they're using, I would maybe do some light reading on that and see how you can take those programming problems and see if you can apply those to the tech stack they're working with, to really try it, especially if it's like if they have any tooling or any like projects that are open source, like checking that out and looking at that. One specific example that I did when I was interviewing at GitHub, I knew what team I was interviewing for, and their project was open source. So I took a look and I was like, okay, it's this language, and this is how they do this, and this is how I do that, and just being just aware and using your resources and really trying to find out as much information as you can about the company and how they work technically, and how they work as a team is really important.
Yeah, just to agree with Cracking the Coding Interview is an amazing book. It really, I think it's not only about the questions. Of course, some of the questions are ones that will appear in your interviews, but I think it really teaches you how to think about coding interviews, and get you into the mindset of what type of data structures am I going to be asked. There are so many different types of data structures, but not there's obvious ones like red and black trees, something like that would never come up in an interview. And if it does, I mean, that's really unfortunate, but it's quite uncommon, right? So I think a book like that really helps you get into the right mindset and teaches you how to think about problems. So practicing the questions in there will help you solve a lot of other questions that might not be in there, but they follow the same patterns. And something that I used to do, and I even still do right now, is before interviews, I will go through a lot of basic questions and I will write them down on paper, just like Riyad said. That, for example, I will always do a merge sort, I'll always do a selection sort, get those two out of the way, I'll do a binary search tree. Just a lot of the basic ones that a lot of the questions are based off of. So it's really important to practice those if you're going for a technical coding interview.
I also want to add on to that and just say, remember just to breathe. Remember that, your nerves can trip you up. And just to, like, before you walk through that door, take a few breaths. Remember that you can say to yourself whatever motivational thing you can say to yourself, to just calm yourself down. Maybe call somebody really important in your life before you go in. Whatever you do to really center yourself before you walk in is really important, so that you have your clear mind and conscience and judgment when you walk in and you start being interviewed and getting these questions.
Okay, so since you guys are all in these great companies, how did you guys hear about these openings and the position that you have now, and what was the process of getting it, the interview process? For example, seeing your GitHub right when you enter into the room. Anyone else? For example, Rhea, I don't.
Sure, I actually.
Rhea, I don't. You were all the way in LA, and then now you're here. Like, how did you hear about IBM Watson? And
Yeah, I mean, I actually came to New York for Uncubed Startup Odyssey, and ended up walking through a bunch of booths and coming across IBM and being very confused, because, in my eyes, I thought they were some old company that, still made laptops. And then I saw in the background this poster about Watson, and I recalled that it beat Jeopardy, and this whole this exciting notion of artificial intelligence and computers that think like humans, and there was actually a cancellation for an interview that I took on the spot. And this is while I was in New York for less than 48 hours. I ended up doing well on the technical interview. Going back to UC Berkeley, where I was at school, flying, this has all happened within like 3 or 4 days. Went back to the West Coast to UC Berkeley, and then within, like 24 hours notice, coming back for a second and third round, all in 2 consecutive days, in the midst of midterm season. And so it was kind of a really sporadic and hectic few days. But the funny part is that I actually had a midterm the day they had their final round interviews at IBM Watson. So I'm begging my instructor, my professor, to let me take it when I get back. Obviously, I didn't study when I was interviewing, and I finished 2 days of hectic interviews, coding challenges, presentations, business cases, so on and so forth. And I'm on the plane to take off from New York back to Berkeley. On a red eye, I was like, all right, 6-hour flight. I'm going to study my butt off right now. Right before we take off, I get a text saying, congratulations, your offer will arrive. And I didn't study at all. So we all know how that midterm ended up. That's my story.
I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about their process.
Oh. Yeah. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So the question was, how did you first hear about the opening? So my experience has been like my last 2 positions have been very, very, I guess, like unusual in terms of it's happened both at the same conference. So at Microsoft, I was speaking at a conference, and there was a recruiter there, or sorry, the hiring manager there, who was now, he's a hiring manager right now, my manager now. And he sent me like a DM on Twitter, direct message on Twitter. I was just like, hey, when are you speaking next? Would love to chat with you. And like, and then like we got to talking, and like, he told me about like the position. And I ended up coming to Microsoft because to do an on-site interview. And thankfully, because like the work I was doing at GitHub was all open source, they could see everything that I've written. And they could also see, and like I had the speaking experience, so they could see like he scouted me while I was speaking. And so like a lot of it was just a lot of just conversation, like, how would you, like kind of like, and it was like questions like pertaining to the actual position, like in terms of hesitation, how would you write, how would you approach a certain problem. But and GitHub was kind of the same way. It was I met somebody at a conference, and they reached out to me, and I went through the interview process, like technical interview. My technical interview at GitHub was a pair programming exercise, which was really awesome. And I really liked the interview because it was a problem that the engineer had dealt with the week before, which was really, and she didn't tell me that until after the interview was over. And so that was really fun. But prior to that, at Rockstar, I applied, and it took a very, 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 very long time, like 4 months, in terms of like, and there was also technical interview I got, and then like, I got to speak with the team, and then, it was just a very long process of, and then, it's a lot of paperwork, all that fun stuff. So yeah.
So for me, for my, how did I hear about Snapchat? So what actually ended up happening was a recruiter reached out to me, and they said, I saw your LinkedIn and wanted to know if you're interested in coming and working for Snapchat. And this was while I was at Tumblr, and my LinkedIn was out of date, and it said that I was in Toronto. So the recruiter was like, yeah, we have this position open in Toronto. And I was like, well, I'm in New York, and I'm not really going to think about this, And at the time I didn't realize that my LinkedIn was out of date. And that's why he thought, that I would want to work for Snapchat Toronto. And a few months later, I was, talking about it with my friends, and they were like, why didn't you reply? Like, you should definitely, at least take the interview, just get some practice. It doesn't matter, if you want to take it or not. It's a company that you use Snapchat so much, and you should definitely just interview. So I reached out to the recruiter again, and I was like, hey, I'm interested in that interview you mentioned a while back. And it turned out that they had a position in New York as well. So they were like, oh, well, if you want to, join the New York team instead, that's totally fine. So I ended up joining the New York team.
Yeah, I want to add on to that and just say, as you go on throughout your career, the longer and longer you've been in the industry, you will have recruiters reach out to you and ask you, are you interested in, in interviewing? And if it's a position that is actually interested, but you're not looking to move on from your current position, I would say, and I would agree with Sambul's friends saying, yeah, just take the interview and see what happens, see what it's like. And, if anything, it's like great practice, see where you are, because it's a great way to just see where you stand in the industry and really evaluate yourself, because interviewing is never fun. It's never a fun thing to do, but like being able to gauge yourself and see where you are whenever you're ready to make that next move is wonderful.
Yeah. And from my experience, I would say that LinkedIn is actually a really good tool for recruiters to find you. And it's one of those tools that is, a top recruiting tool in the industry. So make sure your LinkedIn is up to date, and make sure the city is correct, because you might be missing out on opportunities that you don't even know about. So yeah.
Okay, that's cool experiences on getting such cool jobs. Ray, I just wanted to shout out your family member. Someone said, how does the support of your family help you? And Rhea, are sports or physical activities helpful in tech?
Yeah, that's my little brother, Omer, who's 11 years old, and he supports me all the time. But I have to give credit to all my friends and family, my girlfriends, my brothers, 3 younger brothers. They're all so amazing, and I stress out and I call them. And just like Jasmine said, before you walk into an interview or an important presentation, pick up the phone and call someone important. Your mental state of mind and well-being is of utmost importance, and that's where physical activity truly does help out. I mean, I've solved some of the most difficult problems on a run, And it really helps to kind of step away from the computer sometimes, especially when you're reaching kind of a mental roadblock. So, you know, thanks for the shout out. I actually, quick little story. My little brother, when he was 5, he watched me when I was in college do programming assignments, and he was fascinated by the laptop, and he wanted to actually play with mine. And I said, you know what? I'll buy you a laptop, but you have to promise to take this Python course online. The reason I did that was because I felt so disadvantaged that when I got to college, there had been, you know, people I was competing with who learned C++ or Java before they spoke English. And so, you know, get started as early as you can. And my little brother did that, and he's a rock star.
Shout out to your brother. So one more question, last question from Diabolical Toast. What type of advice would you give for someone who isn't certain of which area of the tech industry they would like to pursue, whether it's software development or web development? Sambo, if you want to.
Yeah, I'd say a really good place to start is really just knowing what you like what type of products do you like using? What do you like interacting with? What is the technology that's around you that you find really interesting? And I think that's a really good place to start, especially, you know, especially if you're like a college student who hasn't really experienced working in the tech industry. So I think figure out what you like interacting with when it comes to technology and go into that field and just start it off. Like, it's okay if you end up hating it. You can switch, you can, you know, try something else, which is the beauty of the tech industry. And for sure, I would say internships are really, really important experiences because, you know, at an internship, you get a taste for what the real world is like. You get a taste for what does it mean to have a career? What does it mean to, you know, work from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever it is? And you'll definitely develop a taste for what you like working on. You'll get a preview of it, which I think is really invaluable. And, you know, I recommend everyone taking an internship if they can, using your summer, you know, work somewhere, see what you like, see what you hate. It'll help you a lot.
Awesome. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us and for the panelists for sharing your experiences. I really enjoyed hearing from all of you guys and meeting Rhea's brother, well, reading his comment. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I reached out to you guys and I was so excited to hear from you guys and have you guys join us. So
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
thanks for organizing this.
Thanks for everybody who tuned in.
Yeah.
All right, bye now. Bye now.
bye.
Bye.